It seemed like the perfect summer job. A small hotel, a few miles out of town, in need of a few junior staff members to help keep things running during the tourist season. It seemed like exactly what I needed, but I could never have predicted what happened within the walls of that hotel. On my first day, I was paired with an older woman, Kelly, who oversaw the hotel management. She gave me a walkthrough of everything that I had to do, along with several rules and instructions I had to abide by. It started as a very standard list: stay out of the way of guests, keep your uniform clean and tidy, normal things. Then came the final, most important rule. Kelly seemed to lean in closer to me, her voice almost at a whisper. There's just one more rule, she told me. Do not, under any circumstances, ever go into room 13. Of course, I had a million questions about this strange rule. I had walked past the door to room 13 several times on my tour of the hotel, and it had looked exactly like all the other doors. What's so special about room 13? I asked Kelly, curious. She shook her head. It's a rule that comes from the hotel owner, Kelly explained. No one is allowed in there, not even me. It's kept locked at all times, and that's all I know about it. I accepted that response and thought nothing more of it. Perhaps the hotel owner had his own reasons for keeping the room locked. There was no reason to believe that anything was going on in there. Of course, I later came to realize that I should have seen red flags much sooner. It had been a few weeks of working in the hotel without problems. Everything had gone smoothly, and I had basically forgotten all the bizarre rule of room 13. I had become familiar and friendly with my fellow members of staff. I was particularly close with Mark, one of the waiters, or Elizabeth, the housekeeper. I often found myself working closely with Catherine, a junior staff member like myself. Everything was going well until one night. I was getting ready to go home one evening after my shift had ended when Kelly approached me. She explained that her night shift manager called in sick and asked if I would do her a favor and stay on for overtime. I agreed, and the first hours of the night shift went smoothly. It was only after all the guests had retired to their hotel rooms and gone to sleep that I finally started to know something extremely odd. I was walking through the hallways of the hotel when I passed room 13. I thought nothing of it until I heard a small noise, almost like a scratching sound coming from inside the room. It made me stop in my tracks, and my instincts wanted to open the door and see what was going on. But I remembered the rule: do not go into room 13. Whatever these strange noises were, I would have to ignore them. About an hour later, I was checking my emails in the hotel office when I heard a loud crash. Thinking that someone was in danger, I rushed up to where I heard the noise, taking myself all the way up to where I was, once again standing outside the door of room 13. I could have sworn that I heard the sound coming from in there. That couldn't be possible. Knowing that I was not allowed to enter room 13, I turned around to walk away. Suddenly, I heard another loud crash. It was undeniable that it had come from room 13. I couldn't ignore all these strange sounds coming from the room. I'd always been taught to act on instinct, and all my instincts told me there was something very, very wrong with room 13. Whatever or whoever was in there, it was giving me a very strange feeling. I don't quite know what came over me, but I suddenly started to press on the handle of the door, trying to force it open. I was well aware that trying to enter room 13 against the rules could lose me my job, but I couldn't ignore the noises coming from the room. Something could really be wrong, and I didn't want to take that risk. The door was locked, but it was not impossible to force it open. It took a lot of strength, but eventually the door opened a crack, and then I was able to pull it open enough for me to be carefully slipped into the room. The first thing that I noticed was that the room was pitch black inside. I tried to adjust my eyes, but I couldn't see a thing. It was like stepping into a complete void of darkness. I knew where the light switch should have been, so I felt all the way up the wall for it, but there was no switch. I tried to take a step forward into the room, but as I stepped, my foot hit something. It was solid enough to make me lose my balance slightly. Slowly, I bent down to touch whatever the thing was. As soon as I put my hand on it, I could feel that there was something very strange going on. It almost felt like a leg, almost like that of a person. But that couldn't be possible. I reached out behind me, but all I could feel was another leg, seemingly coming from another body. I reached out again, only to feel another, an arm this time, then a torso, another leg. It was endless. I felt as though I was surrounded, except there was something odd about these arms and legs. Just didn't quite feel alive. I immediately felt sick. There was no way, absolutely no way that I could be standing in the middle of a room full of bodies, but It all made sense. The strange rule about not stepping foot in room 13. Of course it all made sense. This was where the bodies were hidden. I didn't want to believe it, but there seemed like no other explanation. I felt completely sickened, my head spinning, a shiver running up my spine. There was no way. I never seen a dead body before, let alone be surrounded by them in a pitch-black hotel room. Was this what happened to people who entered room 13? I put a hand on the wall to steady myself, and I suddenly felt the light switch. Feeling relieved by that, I quickly turned it on and watched light flood the room. This was it. I was mentally preparing myself for the sight of possibly over 20 dead bodies, a sight that would surely make me sick. However, when the light turned on, I was not met with the horrifying sight of countless murder scenes. Instead, all lined up around the room, some perfectly propped up and others sprawled on the floor, were human-sized, doll-like figures. They looked just almost human, except for one eerie difference. They didn't have eyes, just black, void-like holes where eyes should have been. Their necks were oddly floppy too, dropping to one side. What was most horrifying about these life-size dolls was that they almost exactly resembled all of the hotel staff members that I had become so familiar with. I saw the doll version of Kelly, her head falling into her lap. I saw Mark, the waiter, with huge black holes where his eyes should have been. I saw Elizabeth, who was sprawled on the floor, legs sticking out. I even saw Catherine, propped up against the wall, like she was in a child's dollhouse. I wanted to scream, run away, do anything. This was somehow worse than seeing the disgusting sight of bodies. This was 10 times creepier. It made me feel goosebumps up my arms. I wanted to drive away from the hotel, from the town, and never look back. The one thing that still stuck in my mind was the fact that every single staff member had a doll here, even the newest hires. Everyone had a lifelike floppy doll, looking like an eyeless corpse. The only doll that was missing, the only member of staff that didn't have a matching doll, was me. There was no doll in room 13 that resembled me. Somehow, that fact was far more chilling. I was about to take my phone out of my pocket, to take photos or call the police or do anything about this terrifying situation, when all of a sudden, the room went black. Pitch black. I tried to move again, but I couldn't. My legs would not stand up and run. My arms would not reach out to steady myself. I couldn't move. I was fixed. I was stuck. I was trapped. Just then, I felt someone holding my shoulders, propping me up against the wall. I wanted to scream or see who it was, but it felt like I was trapped inside my own body. I was completely unable to move. The hands extended my arms and legs, and I even felt the hands around my neck, making it flop forward ever so slightly, just as it had done on the dolls. That's when I realized it. The dolls inside room 13 were not lifelike copies of the hotel staff members. They were the hotel staff members. And I was just about to meet this very same fate in room 13. If only I had just listened. This story happened about 7 years ago. I had moved to a new state months prior to this event. I was the new kid in a small town, the new kid that came from a city. I did not easily fit in, but I made one solid friend who happened to be my neighbor. Well, as close as neighbors get in rural southern states. We began having sleepovers. She had mentioned later that her mom made her go to sleepovers so that I would have a friend. We ran in different clique circles, but on weekends we usually would be at each other's house, on wooded walks, or at the lake that was at the bottom of the hill my house just rested on. Or at the lake that was at the bottom of the hill my house rested on. On a Sunday night around October or November, I had a very strange dream. It was not uncommon for me to have dreams where I was slightly in control. I'm not sure if lucid dreaming is the right word or not. Most, if not all, of my dreams were like this. I had some control of what I was going to do or say just to advance the plot. During this dream, though, I had no control. I was not even observing. I was in the body of someone else. It was a first-person point of view. I could tell I was this man based on jeans and boots I saw as I looked down. Everything was a foggy haze. It looked like the Thriller music video almost, down to the single person in a red jacket. This person in my dream was a little girl. Again, everything was gray, dim, and gloomy, except for her. She was on a swing wearing a red peacoat jacket. had blonde curly hair, and her back was to me. I was very quickly advancing towards her. I imagined I was coming out of a wooden area. The swings were a little separate from the rest of the playground, where I was able to vaguely hear her older brother playing and yelling that he was a pirate controlling a sinking ship. Then I got close enough to the girl, where I snatched her up and ran away. I woke up and my whole body was tense. My ears were ringing and my body was in cold sweats. I sat up quickly and tried to catch my breath a bit and wrap my head around how vivid this dream was, how hopeless I felt, and how demented my mind was for coming up with this dream. I blamed myself for watching too much true crime and how it was negatively impacting me. I was so upset until I reached and checked my phone. Buried down in my notifications was an Amber Alert. Our area never gets Amber Alerts, and on the rare case we do, there are always missing or stolen cars, never missing kidnapped children. But as I read this Amber Alert that appeared on my phone, my blood went cold and rushed to my ears. My eyes grew wide, but black filled my peripherals. I was reading Missing Kidnapped Child in a town that is 20 minutes away from mine, and a description perfectly matching the one of the little girl in my dream. There was a feeling so deep in my stomach I can't even describe. Now, as I write this, I can feel it forming, but nothing else has ever happened to warrant that same feeling with the same intensity. I was nauseous and could not do anything to get the bile out of my throat or will myself to get out of my bed for the school day. My mom would not allow my weird coincidence having missed a day of school, though. She said that I must have gotten up and ran the Amber Alert and curated a dream from it, but I know I had not. A constant argument in my household is the frustration my mother feels about how I cannot wake up on my own no matter how early I go to sleep. I can sleep through alarm clocks, fire alarms, tornado warnings, bookshelves falling, cats fighting, and apparently Amber Alerts. This was not a coincidence, but I had to go to school. I kept my dream to myself, only mentioning the kidnapping to my small group of friends. Some did not even get the alert on their phone. The conversation topic withered away, but my stomach remained in knots. This feeling stayed for the next couple of days. At a certain point, the feeling could have been boiled down to a total lack of sleep I was getting. At some point, I forgot about everything and it went away. That spring, however, I remembered what had happened. My stomach knotted again and remained even while I was at the lake with my neighbor friend. It had been months since the kidnapping in my dream, so when I casually asked, "Do you remember that little girl in a red coat that was kidnapped in the fall?" while laying down in my kayak, feet draped over the edge and submerged in the cool water, I did not expect to hear my friend abruptly sit up and quickly respond with a yes. I slowly followed her and sitting up, and we just kind of stayed like that, staring, awestruck. There were parts of my life that she never knew about, because I knew that she would judge, laugh, gossip. This dream was 100% one of those things, but I felt the urge to tell her. My mouth opened and closed, like the fish below us that occasionally nipped at our feet. I finally blurted out, "I had a dream that night," and the look on my friend's face was an odd mixture of fear, confusion, and relief. We continued to bob in the water and stare at each other until she finally responded, "Me too." It was now my face that read fear, confusion, and relief. Did my friend, who was in the center of popularity, cheerleader, that nothing weird ever happened to, who did not spend her free time watching true crime and paranormal shows, admit to having some sort of wicked, twisted dream that same night? "It was of the kidnapping," I said, truly testing the waters. "Like the perspective of it," she said, agreeing with me. In the warm, baking sun, goosebumps began to spread over every inch of my body. We began recounting the dream to each other, nodding when something was similar, furrowing eyebrows when there was a slight difference. The only differences there were, though, was that my friend saw everything in the eyes of the little girl, and I saw everything from the eyes of the kidnapper. The little boy said the same thing about his ship sinking. The playground was foggy, the swing was rusty. It was all the same. Another thing to point out is that my friend never slept. Like, her hair was always perfect because she would not be able to go to sleep until 4 in the morning, so she would straighten or curl her hair, sleep for an hour and a half, wake up to her alarm clock, then go with her mother to school. This night, however, she went to sleep early enough for her to dream, and also not be woken up by an Amber Alert. To this day, we occasionally bring up the fact that we had this dream and just how weird the situation was. Nothing ever came of the kidnapping. How we had the same dream, the same night, about an event that happened while we were sleeping is unspeakably nerve-wracking and still sends chills down my spine. The Creature of Whispering Waters. Nestled deep within a forgotten corner of the world lay the infamous Whispering Waters. This seemingly serene swamp had an air of mystique about it, captivating the imagination of those who dared to wander near. However, beneath its deceptively peaceful facade, a malevolent creature lurked, and people say that if you go near these waters late at night, you will hear the whispers of children begging for someone to save them. Or perhaps it is the creature itself making these sounds to trick those unwary of the tale into the dark waters for another meal. The locals of the area speak of a monster, legendary and feared, a creature shrouded in shadows and born of your darkest nightmares. Tales were whispered from generation to generation, passed down like treasured heirlooms, warning parents of the monstrous being that stalked the murky swamplands. Children, in particular, have been cautioned for generations against venturing too close to the edge of Whispering Waters. They were told chilling stories of a creature with glowing eyes that pierced the darkness, a slimy, scaly body that slithered effortlessly through the muck, and a jaw lined with razor-sharp teeth, its breath reeking of the aroma of rotted flesh, ever ready to consume those who wandered into the swampy bog. At first look, it could be confused with an alligator, which is native to these areas, but should the creature cross the water and come on land, it is said that it would reveal itself to be otherworldly. It has been described as a hellfish monstrosity with long, lanky, scale-filled human legs and able to stand upright and charge at incredible speeds. The tale I could find of children who shall remain unnamed in their encounter with this creature of the night goes like this. On an otherwise uneventful evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a group of adventurous children decided to put the legend to the test. They felt brave, ever emboldened by their numbers, and were determined by the stories that echoed through their minds. They set out on a daring quest into the heart of the swamp. Little did they know, the monster of Whispering Waters had grown reckless, craving the taste of youthful innocence, the craving for the soft, supple flesh and its patience wore thin. And as the children approached, their laughter and excitement echoed through the dense foliage. As the group ventured deeper, the atmosphere shifted. The air grew heavy, a foreboding stillness settled upon the swamp. Then they heard the quiet whispers of children, softly calling out for help from deeper into the tangled marsh before them. The children, oblivious to the looming danger, continued their expedition, unaware that their playful footsteps were being tracked by malevolent eyes. Suddenly, a blood-curdling screech tore through the night, shattering their carefree spirit. Panic consumed them, their hearts racing as they realized the monster of Whispering Waters had awoken from its slumber. With terrifying speed, the creature emerged from the murky depths, a grotesque amalgamation of nightmare and reality. Its elongated limbs propelled it forward, each step accompanied by a sickening squelch. The children's hearts raced as they struggled to escape its relentless pursuit. Their fear was almost paralyzing them. Each step through the murky, muddy water felt like it would be their last, as they heard the creature screeching behind them, water splashing wildly as it charged forward. One by one, the monster closed in, its foul breath hot on their necks. Desperation gripped the children as they fought against the treacherous swamp, sinking deeper into the mine with every desperate stride. Just as the creature opened its maw, rows of teeth glinting in the moonlight, prepared to seize its first victim, a deafening thunderclap shattered the night sky, followed by a torrential downpour that unleashed its fury upon the swamp. And with that loud clap from the sky, the creature seemed to vanish back into the swamp. The heavens themselves seemed to intervene, creating a temporary refuge for the terrified children. Their frantic cries reached the ears of a group of nearby teenagers who, fearing the worst, gathered at the edge of the swamp. The storm raged on, but their determination to save the innocent children held steadfast. They too had heard the rumors of the Whispering Waters, and wondered if the screams they heard were truly children, or the trickery of the creature rumored to live within. As the rain battered against the monster's scaly hide, the swamp waters rose. It is assumed that the water swallowed the creature, and perhaps the flashing lights of thunder had pushed it back down into the murky depths. The children and the teenagers that had come to help both reported on its otherworldly howls mixed with the sound of thunder, as if the very elements were conspiring against the abomination. After some time, the children heard the call of the teenagers and made their way to them out of the marsh, their hearts heavy with dread. You can believe the accounts of the Whispering Waters. You can choose to believe the many tales of the hellspawn creature that has been spoken of and whispered about as a local legend. Or you can assume that it was a mix of reality and imagination, or perhaps just an abnormally large alligator that haunts the swamp of the Whispering Waters.